You're listening to the Soil Sisters podcast, where we dig in on family farming and ranching, regenerative agriculture, healthy living, and planting seeds in our community. We invite you to listen, subscribe, and grow with the Soil Sisters. Hi, y'all. I'm Johanna Nuding, joined by my blood, soul, and soil sister, Crystal. Welcome to the show.
Hello, sister. I'm very excited about our podcast guest today.
Yes, me too. I mean, these sea captains to homesteaders. I can't wait to have this conversation. Welcome, Jonah and Kendra Martin, to the Soil Sisters podcast. They farm 50 acres of hilly pasture and timber in southwest Iowa. They focus on regenerative practices using rotational grazing. Their new farm store fosters community building and networking, starting with clean foods. From their website, they sell shelf-stable, nutrient-dense foods and tallow products. Jonah and Kendra, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Happy to be here.
So Jonah and I were introduced through a mutual friend. Crystal Buck introduced us to Jonah. I would love to kick off the conversation and just figure out how y'all went from both being captains to deciding to buy a farm and become homesteaders. Farmsteaders, I should say.
Do you want to start with that one?
Go ahead.
Boy, where do we start with that? Yeah, I mean, we were both ship captains, and that was our livelihood. When we got married, as we say, there's no room for two captains on the same ship. So it was like, what's the game plan? So at that point, we
lived on a boat together.
And we lived on a boat together as well at the time. And we also knew we wanted to have a family, so it wasn't going to work to just stay out on ships. So we made kind of a transition to shore, kind of, and we were living out in the San Juan Islands. And so Kevin kind of became the ship captain, and I became the behind the scenes at home. We had our first child, and you know, how we transitioned from that to farming. I would say it's like, you know, all big changes in life it's a lot of little things that kind of come together, or a lot of separate pieces that come together to make the big decision. So there's no one single reason that we said, we're leaving, we're selling everything and moving to the Midwest. It was this kind of idea that had creeped in for quite a while. We're both from the Midwest originally. I mean, I'm from Western South Dakota, and Kevin's from northern Missouri, not far from here. And we have family in the area, his family in the area here. So there were a lot of different reasons why we sold that business that we were running and moved out here. A big part of it was to be closer to family. Our family was aging, and it was like the long game here doesn't look good. And we had been running, it was a landing craft that would move. I mean, you can explain this part of what it was.
But we did several different things. You know, there was whenever we first met, we were both running passenger boats in Alaska and the Sea of Cortez. And she was working a bit in the polar regions as well, in North and South area. And then once we got married, we kind of decided we probably should start seeing each other. And then, yeah. So I started actually working at a stringed instrument building, a lutherie shop there in Seattle, where we're living on a boat right by the Ballard Locks. And then we ended up getting an opportunity to purchase a 100-foot steel landing craft up in the San Juan Islands, which are kind of some islands between more or less Seattle and Victoria, BC, out there. Cool. So we moved up there. We just moved our boat up to the San Juan Islands. And then we were like, you know, I guess society kind of wobbled a little bit there in the COVID time. And that was not our primary decision for leaving, but we had
already decided to move at that time. We had already had things in play. We had sold our house. Our business was already actually for sale. That made it a lot easier to move, because
it was like making the right decision.
Yeah, I wasn't quite there yet. I had put roots down. I had a community of friends. We had our second kid. You know, I was pretty happy to be there. And so we had made the decision. It's not like it was made against my decision or my will. I helped make that decision to move, but I was still kind of like, oh, how about this decision that we've just made? And then when COVID hit, it made it a lot easier to do that move. It was like, oh, okay, here we go. And as far as why to transition from ships to farming, it's like, well, one, ships are now out. That's just off the table. And we both had been.
Well, because we wanted to be close to family.
We
right?
want, yeah. But
So,
obviously, I'm sorry, I was making it as a joke. Like that was an option to move and keep our careers. We had to do a full shift. And we weren't really interested in just doing like a 9 to 5 or living in a town. We wanted to have that dynamic and organic feel with our family as well, like our young kids, that they could be part of what we were doing. We were comfortable with running our own business. So we weren't seeking out just, we were willing to take some risks, I think, for something different, with a bigger vision in mind too of what we were seeking. You know, we weren't just seeking new jobs. We weren't just seeking being closer to family. We wanted to be able to make our living where we were at, give something to our kids, have land under our feet in case they ever decide to want to continue what we're doing or to live where we are. They have the ability to actually have land under their feet.
Did either of you have experience in farming before this?
I grew up around cow-calf operations and conventional row crop. And, all my extended family ran businesses like that.
And I have none. I mean, I'm like passionate at heart about growing things. And was the extent of my experience.
She had an incredible garden on the boat. We had this converted fishing trawler that we lived on, and it was just an insane jungle. So when you go through the locks in Seattle, we just had plants and vines. Yeah,
the tomatoes vining up the rigging of the boat. I'd have to like secure for seas. I'm like, wait, I got to go tie up the tomatoes and make sure they can handle a little extra wind today. So
that's amazing. So then you decided, okay, we're going to move to Southwest Iowa. We're going to start this farm. What was the beginning stages like? Because there's so many people right now that are looking to leave the city, or they're buying little pieces of property here and there. A lot of them reach out to Crystal and I. I've got 30 acres. I've got 50 acres. What do I do with it? So how did y'all make those decisions?
Well, you kind of described your thought pattern. The way I came to farming was, there's this kind of competition, right, between, do I live next to the city and have these interesting amenities where land is crazy expensive and I can have less of it? Or do I live out in the sticks, way out in the middle of nowhere, where I can have more land, but fewer, to the extent that there's opportunities in the cities, And so we kind of landed where we did based upon where our family's located. So there's this tension between wanting to be where we're kind of recreating careers, by the way. This was kind of a complicated thing.
Duh.
How's this going to work? So I didn't know why being in Des Moines or Kansas City was going to be helpful, but we didn't want to live there. We just didn't want to live next to the cities. And we've always, place we lived in Washington, the whole county didn't have a stoplight in it. And same thing here. Like, we moved to a county that doesn't have any stoplights in it. And so that wasn't our criteria. It just happened to be that way, which we noticed in hindsight. But I remember thinking, okay, we want to have little enterprises on our property. I said I really wanted to have I was really influenced by the lutherie shop where I worked. Open up a big overhead door and have a bunch of interesting equipment and make things, and have community there, foster community, and generate things on your property. Well, the more we talked about that and trying to do that frugally without a whole bunch of capital expenditure, it's like, oh, that sounds like farming. And so we need to be looking at, how do we use our whatever piece of property we might find to generate revenue and some stability. And this ties in with the whole, like, personal resilience for the family, lifestyle, which is nourishing, meaningful, connecting with community on matters that we find deeply life-giving. And so there's like, okay, farming. So that started our farming discussion.
Yeah, and there's a couple of important elements in there, I think, that are just important to mention here as people might be listening. Is one, we say we moved back to family, but we kind of set a radius. So his family's not all in like the original town where he grew up. So it's not like we moved back to his town, which is an important point, because we're still transplants in this town, which is also kind of framed how we go about things. We're closer to family, but we're not moving back to our roots. And then one other thing I think that is not entirely unique to us, but what we didn't do was say, hey, we're going to make this life transition and we'll slowly do it on the weekends and then it'll get bigger. And then it was like, there we go. We've made this big transition. So I did have I had a sewing business that I was able to kind of keep going that helped support us, but it was a big, like, turn your life upside down.
Still kind of is.
Yeah, still, the secret is, it still is. It's real intense, but we're getting our head above water.
And how many years
I was-
into it are you? Go ahead,
Yeah.
sis.
It makes sense to me that y'all were ship captains and you're willing to be out in the ocean and deal with whatever happens there. And then, of course, you come, and now nature is still your, thing that you are living against.
Yeah.
You couldn't go get a 9 to 5. You're a ship captain. You're used to being on the ocean and dealing like, okay, let's secure the tomatoes for the sea. Like, that's not going to get it for you at Home Depot or something. So anyway, it just
there's that
coping,
sense.
which is kind of there's a certain amount of coping, which just seems to be part of what we do.
Yeah. So we moved to the farm in 2021, spring of 2021. So we're just a little over, 4.5 years in. And it's, as I use this expression a lot, but it's like drinking from a fire hose.
Still,
So
yes.
Been a lot, as you guys would know. It's and that's not our goal. We would like it to kind of slow down to maybe a garden hose and then maybe just a glass of water to enjoy that a little bit more. But it's pretty intense, yeah. So
we feel that way with what we're doing as well. And I am just like, we find ourselves running for 2 weeks, for 3 weeks, and it's like, okay, we're going to have a couple of days, like, and I just keep telling myself it's not going to be like this forever.
Yeah.
Like, we're building something's happening. And in the beginning, there's a lot more moving parts and we're not as familiar. And so if you're not familiar, it just seems more complicated and more difficult. And so anyway, we bless you. We too feel as we are drinking from the fire hose.
Yeah. And I do think that's maybe this segues into kind of where you were talking about, but this idea of like, how did we decide what to do with the farm? And I don't know that there's any way to truly prepare yourself for what that looks like. Maybe in different models where you're going to kind of step back in and take over the family farm, but change it a bit, or you're doing something kind of on the weekends or seasonally, or you've been doing something that maybe you've been an internship or something, or an intern, and you have kind of a vision of what you're doing. There's this like one element that you can sit and you can study and you can read and you can watch YouTube videos and you can get really deep into that headspace and come up with a laundry lists of ideas that you're going to do. And then there's the reality of the implementation. And also there's so many elements that go into like what things are going to stick and what things aren't. There's just so many reasons why some things stick and some things don't.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
But I don't like it.
Yeah. Or it doesn't work here, or any
in
number
theory.
So we've also had a big part of what we've done is tailoring what it is that we're doing, and even the mindset around it. When we came, our goal was that the farm would earn all of our income. And I think that that's an interesting point of conversation in this new kind of shift towards farming, that many people either want that, they desire that, or there's kind of a cultural push towards that, or an egotism around pursuing that, like being able to accomplish that's successful. If you can make
should be. It should be. A farmer should be able to do that work, and it should be able to make them a living. They should not have to have a second and third job. I want to see people be successful at that so that we can replicate it.
Yeah.
There's two sides of the income statement, right?
Yeah.
There's you've got money coming in and money going out. You've got control over one of them more so than the other. But it's a very live conversation. We definitely had a bunch of great money-making ideas. I was meeting with different inspectors to install different plants and different things here. And I'm really happy those didn't work out. There was a bunch of regulatory reasons we can talk about for why having a commercial rabbit processing plant in southern Iowa would work out as far as penciling out the numbers, but not from a regulatory side, being non-amenable species, et cetera. But there's lots of different ideas like that we went really far down the line on. And there seems to be kind of a Newton's second law of thermodynamics for land on a farm. Like, energy can be neither created nor destroyed. And so there seems to be something about land and the way that people live on it that unless you've got a lot of land or a really extremely precious resource and the capital to extract it and process it, there's kind of a there's only so much wealth that can be generated, which is the beautiful asceticism of the lifestyle, which people are actually romanticizingly getting into, right? Like this is why we want to have simpler lives. So there's a lot of curves all happening at once to have a simpler life, but I demand a high standard of living. Well, okay.
Well, and to just settle on where you were for a second, we have to use the sun's energy to make money, and we need the health in the soil because with the soil and the sun and the free water that rains down, we can turn that into money.
It's incredible.
Amen.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah. And that is truly the only way that we can do it, because if you're doing it in a conventional way, they want you to put poison down that costs a lot of money and it kills the life in your soil. And then every year you have to have more and more. And every year it costs more and more. And every year that you pay that money and put that down, you're killing more and more of your biology. And it is a never ending cycle, a cycle that is moving down like from bad to worse. So when we understand that and just make these few changes, it takes a few seasons or growing cycles, but then things begin to turn around and you are holding more water in your soil. You are having more microbiology that is cycling the nutrients. You do have more success. You're beginning to shift your microclimate. Like these are changes that we can make that you're not paying that high input price. Like maybe you're not getting the dollar amount for your crop or whatever, but also your input cost has gone way down and you're beginning to nurture life. And once you nurture life, Mother Nature is going to take care of you. I don't care what anyone says. I know it's hard, but once she understands that you understand that we are in this together, that I am you and you are me, and everything that we do to ourselves and other people is what we do for ourselves. So it's a cycle and it's beautiful. And all we have to do is relax and begin moving in that direction and doing those things that we know we're supposed to do. Like, I'm sorry, I know if you're holding a bottle of poison, there's something inside you that says this isn't a good idea. And so when we work against ourselves by pouring that poison, even though inside us we're like, oh, this just doesn't feel right, that's where we get crossways. So when we're doing the work that we know we came here to do, feeling good about that, then it is always going to work out. So anyway, I love it, and I'm excited. I'm excited to hear more about what y'all are doing and just see how it works out, because I understand just the very fact that we connected through Buck. I know that this is going in a good direction.
We've got a really good friend we bought some of our sheep from, that he's an amazing farmer, a very talented grazer, and he's got a lot of water under his keel, and he's got this really, really old dictionary. And he said he looked up farming in the dictionary, in the old dictionary, and it said the promotion of life.
I like that.
That's so wonderful.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. So where did you land? Tell us what happens at Hold Fast Farmstead.
Yeah, well, so, and maybe to circle back around that piece of like what we kind of landed on, I think there was, as I was saying, like this need or this desire to earn everything from the farm. And we did have this kind of, I think, a moment of like epiphany. It was probably a couple of years in, sorry, he's still Kevin to me. Jonah also does audio recordings, and he really, there's like these other elements of our lives that we enjoy doing. And so there was this moment going, well, wait a minute, we don't have to cut all of that out. So what is it that we want to pursue with the farm? And what other pieces of this do we want to keep? So he still does audio recording. He's still, deeply involved with that. I do have an off-farm job that I do from home that will become what it becomes in time. To get back on track there, I would say we don't farm full time in the true sense of it. It feels like it sometimes in the day to day. But so what we do is we rotationally graze goats and sheep, and it's a family endeavor. But Kevin kind of is the mastermind behind all that. He's the master grazer, and he's out moving them and thinking of the rotating side of it. And then we also have a decently large for us egg operation with chickens and ducks. We have a garden, and I would say it's a garden more than a production growing space. It's right up there on the edge, and it needs to move beyond garden, but right now I still call it a garden. And then we have the farm store. And so the farm store kind of came about, it's been open a little over a year ago, with a number of the products that we were already making. We were rendering tallow from our animals, turning that into products. We were freeze drying a number of our own foods for our own use, and we found that it was a really great way to make foods shelf stable and keep all the nutritional value in them and make them shippable and long-term shelf stable. So we had a number of these things that were going on, and we said, well, we could put these in a farm store. And ultimately where the farm store has kind of led is this bringing community together around clean foods. So with the mindset that we don't want to do it all. Like we could put beehives back there and we could grow some wheat.
Well, yeah, resilience doesn't mean that you're alone. Resilience means community.
Right? Yeah,
yes.
Exactly. And I think there is that vibe sometimes in the new shift towards homesteading. It's like, oh, well, we'll be self-resilient. We'll do it all. We'll have the orchard, we'll have the garden, we'll have the bees, we'll have the dairy
self-sufficiency is a delusion.
Yeah, you really do need other people, and you will do really poorly if you do all of it yourself. And so at the end of last fall, shortly after we'd opened the farm store, in the process of it, I saw that there was a real demand locally for local produce, which I had not foreseen, because there are a lot of gardeners, and for various reasons, I won't go into it, but it was a surprising demand for produce. And so I thought, well, I could really scale up and I could start growing a lot more food. I don't have the bandwidth, and I don't think that's the best way to do this. We have a lot of growers right here in our area. So I reached out to local gardeners, friends of mine, and also we have a large Amish population, which grows, many of them are now certified organic, but they grow with organic practices, those who are not certified. And so it was kind of like, well, let's reach out and see who's already doing this and bring it together. We're not a big enough space to create a farmer's market. There's not enough population density to do that. So the farm store kind of began as that. It was kind of the place where sellers and buyers could all interact, but not at the same time. It's like the food was there and you could come in and buy it when you wanted. And so it just kind of continues to grow in that dynamic, I guess. And so what the farm store continues to be is a way to bring people together, but not staking a claim that we'll do everything.
I'll speak strategically a little bit for, a lot of your listeners are really strategically oriented and how to do this right. And for part of our reasoning for getting to do what we're doing right now is that we've only got 53 acres, right? And so you call that land bound, right? So then if you're going to generate X number of thousands of dollars per acre, how are you going to do that? So fortunately, having multiple enterprises provides some resiliency and some protection in ups and downs, and not only for our own food production personally, where that's a decrease in expense at the grocery store, and it is an increase in well-being, right, by growing this stuff and enjoying our own. But goats and sheep, for us, part of our decision was, the kids can help with that. They get stepped on a cow, that could really hurt them. But with sheep and goats, they're extremely helpful. So it's a very family enterprise definitely around kidding season. It's very lovely. Our daughter is just so intuitively in touch with the needs of the animals. It's really wonderful to be a part of. And we also know that we don't have enough land to have enough animals for that to be our full income. And so unless we start providing tons of inputs, right? And you get into this, like you're saying, Crystal, like, are you really making more money? And so we're much more in touch with regenerative grazing practices. And that's just more interesting. It's more fulfilling. We feel better about grazing that way. And we've seen a lot of benefits to our land. It's spectacular. So it's more beautiful. So we're rotating as many as we can on our property to maintain that type of benefit to the ground. And then we live in kind of the middle of nowhere. And so if we want to generate more money from value-added products, it really needs to be, okay, what can we ship and what can be lightweight? So then we got into like freeze drying different greens combinations to make a really healthy supplement powder, which is lightweight to ship. It fits in with our overall philosophy of nutrient dense, very healthy, clean foods, stuff like that. So some of those guiding principles have been finding what is most meaningful to us. Some of these regenerative practices, it's just better. It's just for us personally, just more enjoyable and more beautiful to participate with. And then how do we work with those to do value added or commodity livestock? We sell a lot of seed stock too to get their herds, for their herds.
And,
I love this because what you're talking about is context. And when we're looking at the principles of soil health, I have principles of sustainable life health that really go in alignment with all of the things, all the soil health principles. And context is the most important one. And I love what you're saying, because you are going through not that for that reason, but this for this reason. And for all these reasons, these things. And this is what I want people to take away from this conversation is like, what are you doing right now that you could easily monetize or add as another, way to bring income into your life? Just something that it matches, it fits, it's something that you're already doing. You could easily add that on because that's super thoughtful and it's easy for you, and you won't all of a sudden hate doing it.
Well, we even say too that there are ways that don't have to be monetized necessarily, which can immediately add to your quality of life, which has benefits in other ways too.
Exactly.
If you're in an apartment somewhere in the city, you can grow a tomato and it'll be incredible. It'll be an incredible experience, and you'll foster this relationship with this one plant, which will really be interesting. And so it doesn't have to be monetized. Sure, you could make a couple bucks off that plant, but
I think when we got into it, we were, shifting into this lifestyle there's a lot of money that needs to be spent to do it. And we were coming from a lifestyle we didn't have, we didn't have the tools. That was one of the other reasons we didn't pursue things like cattle, the infrastructure and the equipment that was needed. We weren't interested. We'd already come from an equipment and intensive, asset intensive business. So that kind of also helped shape what we were looking at.
More of a management intensive. Alan Savory, Darren Daughtery, definitely those are inspirations for us. And Gabe Brown, understanding ag, those principles, those are real foundational for us. And
I was going to ask you what your path to regenerative was, because you're talking regenerative, but I knew that you said your farming background was seeing more conventional type agriculture. So how did you start going down that road of regenerative?
Well,
is it just reading these guys? Because that's what we did. Gabe Brown, Dirt to Soil. That's where we started.
Yeah. Some of it's kind of philosophical. Like what is farming, right? For a lot of people starting off, you don't know the difference between, as my dad would say, sick 'em and fetch. You know what hay and straw. You don't know the difference. And so as you wade through, it's kind of be disorienting. And if you, I think there was kind of, we watched a lot of Joel Salatin videos initially, I think, or at least some. Like, okay, this is interesting. So you see this system of interrelation going on, and then it didn't take long to realize, oh wow, he's got like boatloads of volunteer labor. Oh wow, there's an input there that we don't have. Yeah. And so the kind of what's our path into that? And we did a course with Darren Daughtery. There's just certain things that draw us. There is the book 40th Century Farms. This.
I don't know the book.
Looking at, this is a NRCS guy from Wisconsin, I think, in the 1940s, 1930s. He looked at the places in the world where people have grown what they grow right now for 40 centuries or 4,000 years. And so that means they're doing something right. Like they got some combination with what they're growing and their lifestyles and what the land is, and they got a simpatico situation going on. There's these, what is simpatico for here? And it's very interesting. What this is tall grass prairie country and oak savanna country. This is what the land wants to be. So how do we work with land that wants to be tall grass prairie and oak savanna. That's interesting,
Yes.
you know?
Yes. There's a book on one of the tables in my grandmother's house that was built in 1900. Our family's ranch was homesteaded in 1887. And in this book that talks about what was grown in Stonewall County during that time. And it's just like all these fruit trees and all of these vegetables and all this stuff that I'm like, when you look out at this landscape now, there's no way that stuff is going to grow. And so just seeing how far we've taken the land past what it was, what it wants to be, and how do we get it back there? And so Crystal and I talk because there was a old orchard out at the ranch that now there's one lone pear tree
Mm,
that is just fighting to survive.
yeah,
And we want to bring that orchard back to life. And so, just looking through this book, and it was, I think, probably close to 100 years ago of what was
mm,
growing there, and reimagining what this land can be if we revitalize the soil and let it be what it wants to be, like you said.
absolutely. It's beautiful.
It is. Yeah, and and the culture around it, right? A lot of this shifts because of the demands of what the culture wants. I mean, around here there used to be dairy operations like everywhere, scattered around everywhere.
For the
Well,
farm crisis.
yeah, before the farm crisis. And so now there's very few dairy operations. They're few and far between, and there's a resurgence in it from a homesteading standpoint, and several people who are doing it and then selling their extra. And so it's kind of coming back about, but it's like the farm crisis obviously was a huge player in that, but
Massive
also,
consolidation of
yeah,
food distribution.
yeah, and people not just getting their food locally. And so there wasn't a need for as much for
Yeah.
local berries. And so, yeah, the culture around all these things as well impacts how farmers choose what they're going to do if they've got a place to sell it or not.
I love that y'all are doing that where you're bringing together the people that are farming, bring your food in, and then people can buy here. We had a little grocery store on the square that was doing that for a long time, and I loved it. And that they went out of business, and the place that took their place doesn't want to do the vegetable part. And I'm just
It's
like,
tough.
we need a place
Yeah.
for people to be able to sell what they're growing because
Well, and
there is a need for it.
that's a good
Well, and
segue.
beyond your farmers market, because that exists.
Exactly.
We have a farmers
Yes, of
market,
course
but
we do.
being able to go in any day of the week, and get fresh produce would be nice.
So
It-
we wouldn't be able to do it if it weren't self-pay and self-checkout.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's something, we'd
There's a lot.
encourage your listeners to really think about what you can do with really low inputs where you are, because this is around us. This is kind of the way farm stores are going. It's sad. It just is what it is. Labor costs are high. We can't afford to pay people to stand at a register when we don't know if there's customers. You can't experiment when the costs are really high to experiment, right? And so there was a store here locally that was kind of similar, perhaps, Crystal, that is no longer around. They weren't doing produce, but kind of local
They were
foods.
trying to do that, bring it together, but it's really difficult when you've got that much of overhead to do that. So we were able to do our farm store with really pretty minimal work on it. We already had the structure. It was an addition off of our existing shop, so we kind of renovated that in there. But it already had, when I say renovated, like we painted, we put in the biggest thing we did was electrical work on it. But already had a nice concrete floor. We put some makeshift tables in. It kind of continues to evolve, but we were able to do that, and people understand it's a self-serve, self-pay. It works out for a lot of people. I think they actually prefer it because they can just run in. They go, oh, I can just go and get my eggs. I don't have to stand in line. I don't have to talk to anyone. I can just go in and grab it. But it's a consideration. And I think one of the big things, we are doing produce. It's very difficult to do the produce because it's low margin items and they all go bad really fast, even when they're local. There's that tagline, oh, buy local, buy local. And it's just this easy kind of bumper sticker tagline that we use, but it is so important.
Isn't
And
it?
so on the consumer side of that, it really does matter because that money does stay local. And so that's one of the things we're trying to kind of bring around too, but it's more expensive to eat local. I can't compete with Walmart on their price of produce. And so when people are constrained by money, which most people are these days, it's really difficult to say, oh, I'm going to go spend the $5 on eggs versus the $2.50 on eggs.
So it's heartening to see the response from people we wouldn't expect. From our community has about 1,800 people here, and our whole county is about 5,000 people. And it's really beautiful and encouraging to see people come out of the woodwork, and I don't know what they're into. They've heard somebody speak on a podcast somewhere. They read the back of a label. They had a family member with some particular situation, and now they're like, I'm going to eat clean, damn it. And
I don't want all the junk on my food.
Yeah.
And Kevin kind of mentioned this earlier, that when we started kind of the vision for the farm, like we said, we knew we wanted to run the livestock. We wanted to run those livestock, one, because it fit for our property, of the type of terrain we had, the age of our own kids, of what we could do, the infrastructure. And then beyond that, it was like, well, what are we going to do? I mean, I love to grow things. I love to grow food. But I was like, sitting at a farmer's market and then bring a bunch of produce home that's rotten at the end of the day. Like,
it's hours away for us.
Get it, you know? And so we really had this vision that was like, okay, we can do livestock because we can sell them as animals or breeding stock. We can sell them as meat, and it's frozen and shelf stable. And then we'll do this other shelf stable food option. Like I said, where we're doing our greens powder, we're doing freeze dried apples and elderberry syrup kits, and actually freeze dried eggs, which are super cool. And because they're shippable. So that was our model. It really wasn't that much local because we didn't think there was room for it. And so that's what is so invigorating about the farm store, is we're here in rural Iowa. We're in industrial ag land. I mean, it's harvest season, and it's truly harvest season right now. It is combines in every field. The co-op has the silos going with all the corn and the beans. And so that's the world we're in, and that's what fuels our economy. And yet there are these really great conversations that are happening on an individual level, and people coming in and saying, man, I don't want that stuff on my food for myself or for my grandkids, or I just, I read this thing about this, or what is chard? How do I eat it?
Yeah.
And so that's what's so invigorating. Like, sure, I can get an online store going, and we do have an online store, and we ship, and we love that side of it. And we want to keep bolstering that because we are a small community. But it's so wonderful to see in this small area people gathering together around food.
And that was a leap of faith for us too, by the way, because as soul crushing as it would be, there's a lot higher margin in freeze-dried Skittles, right?
Oh yeah.
And so we weren't going to go down that road for lots of reasons, but we want to love our customers, right? And we want to have this relationship with them. So that, for your listeners who are wading through their decisions, that leap of faith based upon a life-giving source, your pursuit of life, however you want to define that, people connect with that. Like, that's attractive.
That authenticity behind it, I think, is important, And so, just selling a bunch of Skittles just for the bottom dollar was kind of like, because people would pay off their freeze dryers like that. I was like, oh my gosh, because I did do a few festivals, and I'm like, man, the Skittle booth sold out at noon.
Yeah.
Here I am. But the engagement that I had with people and being really jazzed about what it is. And we also knew the other thing I think that's important is, like Kevin, Jonah had said, he goes, so many names I'm flying. Casey's is our gas station, and also like a local food venue. And so he would say,
our barista.
Yeah, our barista. He'd say, it's not long before Casey's or your local gas station is going to be selling freeze-dried candy. And then what do you have? Like, you can't compete with those guys selling already a pre-purchased food and then turning it into something more. So that's another one of the visions for our farm store, is we are trying to support local ag. So if you, as we kind of put it with people, it's like, if you're doing something agricultural, even if it's not food, we're game for talking. Like, you're raising bees and you've got beeswax and you want to do candles, cool. If you're just buying peaches from somewhere and then you're freeze drying them and selling them, not interested. You're not, it's the agricultural side of it and bringing good ag and making that available around.
I have two thoughts that I've been kind of holding on to. One, doing the honor system at the farm store. That's such an amazing option for rural communities because we all know each other. Mm-hmm. I'm sure y'all probably have a camera or something up.
Yeah, and it's very much on our property. It's not just out of the road and you're kind of coming in. You're driving in. We've got a circular drive kind of thing with a shop. And so you're parking right there and you're in it. But it is a small enough community. Yeah.
Yeah.
We have
Dude,
a
I
camera.
scored some really great kale. I stole those suckers blind.
Yeah. Exactly.
Like if you're in stealing kale, please do take it with you, man.
Yeah.
Family.
So, so that is such a great option for small communities. Crystal and I were just home at our family's ranch, and, it's 5 hours north of us, northwest. And when we're there, just having conversations with some of the local shop owners, because there is no organic groceries at the little grocery store there. And so just starting to have the conversation of, who do you know around here that is growing organic or that wants to grow organic, and figuring out how, when we're home, how do we get good groceries? Because, we packed 2 coolers worth of food to bring with us. And it's like, well, we'd like to support local farmers if we can find them that are doing this. And we know there are, because
We are.
Yeah.
Me
whenever
personally.
whenever we started this regenerative journey in Texas, I had come from Northern California, and I had begun learning about regenerative agriculture from the pot farmers in the Emerald Triangle. And so when I was learning all this stuff, and then I got to Texas, I was a little disappointed in my grocery options or the brands that were carried. And the more we dug in to the regenerative community, it's like people just started popping up out of the woodwork. And it's like, oh, there actually is a pretty sophisticated regenerative community here. And so now we're focusing more, High Plains of Texas, Stonewall County. We're getting more involved with our family and our family's ranch, and trying to help out with the community, the kids in the 4-H and FFA and stuff like that. So now we're looking at what are some options there. And so I love the idea of a farm store, sis.
You want to experiment, you got to be nimble if you're going to experiment, right? Yeah. I'm out of the mind that we're going to take a huge financial risk on something really risky. It just doesn't make any sense to me. So it's been a good way for us to learn what's going on in our community.
And we started it out where, like I said, we hadn't planned on doing produce. I had just put some extra from my own garden out there, and somebody I happened to be talking with in the farm store, they're like, so are you going to have more like tomatoes, more of this? And I was like, oh, whatever's extra. And I was like, oh, there's an interest in this. Okay. So then that's when I started working with the gardeners and local, which was very steep learning curves there as well. The first season that I did this, I did it all on commission based. So basically I only paid what I sold. And those that are around me, our Amish neighbors, they're production growers. They want to grow. They can send it to auction, but they're happy to not have to get it over there. And if they've got a local place, so they were really willing, and there was a lot of grace. There's a lot of relationships that are formed and conversations about how to do that. And so we did it commission based. At the end of the year, I was like, this is ridiculous. There's just way too much of me calculating of whose potatoes sold when I'm not there in the store.
What's 10% of $1?
I mean, 10 cents, that's phenomenal, And I mean, it really was. So this year I took the next risk of saying, okay, we are going to buy everything outright. So I will buy it. I did that in tandem with doing a summer CSA, or community supported agriculture weekly produce boxes, so that I kind of knew at least how much I could get out the door, and then we'd supplement with the extra stuff. So we grew some for the CSA, our neighbors grew some, and then just sporadically somebody would be like, hey, we've got, apples. Do you want apples? I'm like, great, let's put apples in the store and in the boxes this week. So there's just stuff that would show up. Somebody would have something, in that. The reason I say all that as a preface is that when I said, oh, I'm going to buy all this produce and put it in my farm store, I was on that edge of like, do we become the organic, clean store? We're in industrial ag area, and I don't want to offend anyone. We're not from here. I didn't want to offend or push people away because we're organic and we only eat these foods and everything else is bad.
And you should too.
Yeah, I actually want conversations. I don't want labels around things. I really don't. I want open engagement and talking about it. And so
Local healthy food.
yeah, but I was reluctant,
Local.
and there is a big conversation to be had about organic labeling. You know, just because it's organic doesn't mean it's just perfect either. Like, you can organic grow in very
we agree.
ways, you know, but it gets an organic label. So all of that aside, I could see that the clientele or the folks that were coming in were really liking that they knew the food didn't have stuff on it. Not everybody cared, but there was a good amount that did. And so when I swapped this year saying, I'm going to buy it all outright, it meant that I changed what I grew in my own garden because I knew I would be eating more out of the farm store. So I was like, okay, there are certain things I'm not going to grow as kind of a risk carrier. It's like, if I end up with a whole bunch of extra watermelons, we'll eat watermelons all summer long, you know, or whatever that looks like. But because I was going to buy it, I was like, that's it. It's clean food. Because if I'm going to eat out of my store, I want to know that I'm happy eating anything out of the store. So that's actually what put us over the line to say, got it. It's just one, it's done.
Yeah.
And that worked really well because when people come in, they know that everything in the store is clean. And I'm forthright. Not everybody's certified organic. And I'm also not the organic police. I have very good relationships with everyone that I buy from. Anybody who has a question, I'm happy to get it answered. And find out exactly what did they put in their jam. You know, I'll get the ingredients but you know, we also have, in addition to the produce is one portion of the store, but we also do like stone ground organic flour. We do local honey. We do local freeze dried aronia berries. It's all kinds of stuff that we keep it as local as we can. Some of that goes a little bit further, but that's kind of how we
like an hour away, I think.
Yeah. It's all right in this area.
My gosh, I want to come shop there.
Yeah, you know, she was able to put together packages last year that were all from our county, which is really cool. Like a huge diversity, a cornucopia. That was cool. That felt really neat to be able to offer Ringgold County food, this whole box.
Yeah,
that was cool.
But I think that it's, as I say that, of like how we stepped into that model, it was as much as logistics and how that played out of us commissioning food versus buying it. I knew I only wanted to eat the organic food. And so if it was in the store, I was only going to eat those things. I only wanted the stuff grown with good, clean growing practices. But it was just that piece that I went, oh, that actually simplifies the whole model. If I just make the whole thing clean and I adjust what I grow. And so now we focus on growing the things that we grow, that I enjoy growing and that other people don't grow. We grow all the lettuces and the greens and the herbs, and then we do some onions and various other stuff that goes in, but it's really the focus on the greens. Because
I love how you've made that successful for you, for the farmers, and for the community, your customers. That's brilliant.
Yeah, and all along this way too, you know, I now know, okay, to earn what kind of income we think that we need, I would need this many more acres of grazing, right? And so, and because that would be this many more animals, and it's really a great adventure. I mean, people say, "Oh, wow, you've had an adventurous life on these boats doing stuff." I'm like, "Well, this is the biggest adventure. Like this is, you know, the farming. This is
way more wild.
Crazy, you know, it's so cool. I mean, there's so many things going on. Just when you start learning about what's going on between this type of grass and that type of bacteria and fungus, it's like,
and
it's
why
incredible.
They ate this in the morning but not that until the afternoon.
Yeah, they're eating, the goats are all eating selenium today and they ate boron yesterday. What's going on? You know, this is amazing. So the participation piece is really great. Oh, Joanna, did you finish? You had two things that did you get?
Well, yeah, I did, but the other one probably went out the other side of my brain. So I'm sure I'll circle back to it. But one of the things that I do want to talk about, Jonah, that you and I had discussed was the holiness and faithfulness of farming, finding the peace and the rootedness and the groundedness in the practice of farming, and specifically regenerative farming.
Well, you know, we're Orthodox Christians, and your faith is just another way to say worldview, right? Like, what's going on? Like, what world do you live in? And we all have some perspective on what's real and what world we're living in and how we interact and what we're interacting with and all that stuff. Something that's really interesting to me is a really important question right now for all of us is, as a society, we need to know, what is a human being? What is it? And um, for quite a while, we've thought it has something to do with what you can do opposed to other animals, what they can do. It must be something about our capacities, right? So we can, oh, I know, humans play. That's what makes us unique. Oh, turns out that's not right. Or, oh, no, humans use tools. That's what makes us unique. Oh, grats. It turns out what's a human? And then turns out humans process information really effectively with minimal heat loss. Like, oh my gosh, there's AI. What is a human? And so, the tradition we're in offers some really interesting perspective on that, which is very beautiful. And it's that a human is an image of the reciprocally self-emptying community, which is the Holy Trinity, the ground of all reality. And we are an image of that. And so we are stewards of the land insofar as, like a steward, like a wine steward at a party, starts to understand the signals he's getting from the group and what should happen next. Not about power or dominance, but about sensitivity to happenings and needs and knowledge of how to interact and facilitate. And so, in that perspective, that's what farming is. There's this financial gain piece, which is dicey to deal with. It's really dicey to navigate that, where you're just supporting yourself, right? So how much you want beyond supporting yourself? Well, this is where you get into risky territory, where how much do you deserve? Well, we live in a very consumer society. Every household has to negotiate that individually, but that's kind of the foundation, I guess, for how we picture interacting with creation that's around us.
It's hard to add to that. Kevin gets much headier about it than I do.
I think it's beautiful.
I'm new into orthodoxy, and so I don't really talk much about it because I just know that I don't know much of anything. But over the last year, it has been interesting as I deepen into developing a faith that I hadn't been to church in 25 some odd years. And it's interesting how that's affected my relationship with the land and with what Crystal and I are doing. And even around fasting, understanding, our body eating junk cells and like the benefits of doing a, mineral water fast and things like that. And then looking at that through the Orthodox lens has been interesting. It's like, oh, like our bodies are miracles, and we're healing ourselves when we go through this ritual of fasting. And when you and I were talking before, we were making this parallel between regenerative agriculture and asceticism for the land, and fasting and asceticism for the body. That's something that I've thought about a lot since we talked. And, I meditate on that quite a bit. And Crystal and I are in different ways. We both have our relationship with God and with the land. And when we come together, it is important for us to pray over the things that we're doing and feel really good about it, and know that we're honoring nature and the whole ecosystem. Like all these micro choices that we're making are very deep and meaningful in so many different ways. Yeah, it's been an interesting kind of parallel journey for me, regenerative agriculture and faithfulness and the practice of it. Orthodoxy is a way of life. It is a way to be in the world. And similarly, regenerative agriculture, the regenerative life of the land and the animals and our community and all of that. I think it's a really beautiful parallel that I just love to explore more.
Yeah.
Well, I understand fully that Earth, Mother Earth, is the physical manifestation of God. What more could we do than love her and support her and hold her and do everything we can to help her because she gives us everything we've ever had? Every single thing, including artificial intelligence, is Mother Earth. And if Mother Earth is God, then what are we worried about, people? Let's just start supporting life, release our attachment to money and poison and the people in our government who are somehow funded by all this. And I mean, it is honoring and loving and respecting and connecting as community because we cannot do this alone. And that's Joanna and I connecting with people like you who are doing this and who are creating your little community. I am so inspired. I am so excited. I love what you're telling me about your farm stand and how the transitions that y'all have gone through to be where you are and your recognition of how perfect and brilliant and exciting it is to like, okay, I'm going to tune into you, mother, father. I'm listening and I'm watching, and I am going to do the things that I feel and know to do that are going to be the very best for you and for myself and for my neighbor and my family, my community, everyone. It just ripples out through all of us. So it's funny because I do not go to the church, but when Joanna has come home and tell me, I'm like, I'm Orthodox Christian, like everything. I'm like, great, all right, this is fantastic. I've not heard one thing that I disagree with, and I like this is the way that we live our lives, and it is an honor and a privilege to be here on this planet at this time, and I am really excited because the muck has to get stirred up and brought to the surface so that we can skim it off, and then we are creating heaven on earth, and that is my intention every day in the work that we're doing through Soil Sisters and just me personally. I want to be the best person that I can be to support the most people in being their own best selves. So when we're working in that way, how could we fail?
Beautiful. We were at a regenerative ag, actually, it was an Understanding Ag conference not too long ago. And it was so incredible because people from all different types of farming enterprises were there. This is local in our Northwest Missouri there. And it was incredible. There's languages to draw from, right? Like if you're into mathematics, you talk about things with mathematical language, and if you're into biology, you'll use biological language and stuff. And so a lot of these hangups we have talking about faith matters are familiarity with different vernaculars, right? And it was so beautiful when all these different men and women from different farming enterprises, they were there and seeking the really heartfelt responses and sense of responsibility they had for their multi-generational land. um, it was so faithful. And what they were doing was this regenerative agriculture, in one sense, to say it in a Christian sense, is a really deep repentance that we're doing from the Dust Bowl era to all these different ways that we can interact with things and recognizing the relationality of reality. And if we look at basic reality as like small things that interact, which then interact at bigger levels, but then there's this emergence, which is like our consciousness emerges from this, once all the small things are in order, then yeah, that's what gets to a heavy chemical use, a heavy, trying to address the smallest points first, assuming that the most meaningful stuff is only in place when matter is properly organized. But it's not that, it's everything's in relationship, and it's the relationship itself which is the currency that we use in our farms and in our marriages and in our friendships and everything. So developing a taste for the health of relationships transcends our friends and family. It goes into your land, and it's a very deep, spacey topic, but that's that's what's going on there. And that's people are, as they're getting into regenerative agriculture, they're developing a taste for the health of their relationships that are going on in their soil and in their photosynthesis and their interaction with it, all that. It's really incredible.
I love that you just said that, Crystal. And if we drive to the ranch and it's been super dry and everything looks so dry, it's like she physically
Yeah.
feels parched just looking out at the land. And for me, I'm going back, after we grew up there. I'm almost 50 years old, and being able to drive out there and see things with fresh eyes and look at things that are crumbling down and see them the way I know they will be. And it makes me want to cry because we just got back from there. And I've just felt so overwhelmed by it all. And on this last trip, we took a couple of friends with us who are supporters of our show and the Main Street Gardens, the community garden that we are building here in Lockhart. And so we took them home with us, and to have people that have never been there, to just see the ranch through their eyes was so refreshing. And it just made me feel like this is just, it's all possible. Like everything's possible.
Incredible.
And I think with that too, the piece that we've all kind of touched upon is the relationships with people. And, whatever your faith is or your viewpoint on the world is, that you said it maybe, Joanna, best, like orthodoxy is kind of the lens that you see things through, or how you exist. And I think such a big element of that is the humanity of other people. And so it's easy within farming practices to get into like, oh, that person, what they're doing is bad, their practices, and it can get into this like regenerative, non-regenerative, industrial ag versus not. But at the end of the day, we are all humans. And I have a huge amount of empathy, and not just empathy, but just openness to the conversations that are in our area right here. I mean, we're surrounded by conventional ag, but that doesn't mean there's like a line between us. And so seeing things on a human level and communicating with people on a human level on whatever it might be, on any issue, whether it's farming or political or anything, it's actually what brings us together to converse on these things. And so, I can look down upon some of these practices. I cannot agree with them, but I can empathize with how they've come about. And so if there's empathy or open conversation that's able to happen there, then that's the basis. That's the, that's how we converse with people.
Absolutely.
Yes.
We had a lot of conversations with our dad. That was, it's okay what's been done. Like, can we just turn and move in another direction? We're not trying to point and call anything bad or even worry about it. We're just moving in a new direction now. And I think that's a lot of times people feel bad, or they don't, for what they've done, but that's what they knew. And that's what the chemical salesperson sold them, so it's like, nobody's bad. Let's just shift. There's
going to be things that we learn down the road, and we're going to go, oh, I thought that was really good soil practice. I really did everything.
To future generations.
Yeah. So,
when you said the repentance for like the Dust Bowl, the things that we had done, I have felt that way of like, okay, sister and I are answering for 4 generations worth of decisions.
Yeah. And, by the way, repentance doesn't necessitate some sort of unhealthy guilt or shame. It just means changing. The word there that's being translated, metanoia, it's like a higher mind. Meta, above, noia, mind. It's like, just be like, even in Greece today, they'll say, oh, I repented of my decision to park there. It's like just choosing better, like it's just about making a better decision. And sometimes that's a very weighty, very substantial thing, but we can always choose a higher place, and we take steps that way. I use repentance in that sense, not in some sort of a imposed punishment,
Well,
guilt.
Right.
that's the joy of giving back. This is the joy of service. And that is that truly to make something better than it was and to support the life in all things. That is the joy of service and of giving back. So, and when Joanna said that, I'm like, I will joyfully give every ounce of love that I have and support to that land that nurtured me and made me feel safe for my whole life.
I just spent so I still drive boats once in a while. I was just in Alaska on a boat, and I was there with a really major politician who's really major in the climate change scene, and it was really fascinating because all the group there. We also met with a bunch of young climate leaders who spend all the time in Washington trying to promote change, and it was fascinating because the messaging really was about promoting a fear about what's going to happen if we don't do X, Y, and Z, right? It was fear and manufactured outrage that things are the way they are. And so I really pressed them on that. We had a lot of interesting conversations about that. And what became clear to me, I found this a deep encouragement in my life because it became really clear that they were so uninterested in a perspective of pursuing life and cultivating a sense for the beautiful. They were so uninterested in that it was so obvious to me that I need nothing to do with this movement at all. I need nothing to do with creating fear and outrage over what is or has been or what could be or what we could debate about, all this stuff. So that's a deep encouragement. Like pursuing a sense of beauty, that's what draws people to a place. Now, is that enough I don't know, but for our individual lives, that's the only place that pursuing life is the only antidote to darkness and delusion.
Amen.
Amen.
Well, and also you're so rooted in this that you can hear them and you're like, you're fear mongering. And I hear it and I feel it. And like, this is not ringing true in my body. Like, that because you are so grounded and rooted in your faith and in your knowing. And there's so many people that aren't. And so they can be easily swayed by that or by the TikTok or the, headline reading or, whatever the mainstream media is programming
Well,
them.
and
it's
that
hard.
was my clear indicator during COVID is like, I know our bodies can heal themselves. So you're telling me to wear a mask and stand 6 feet apart. I mean, that's just nonsense. That's just ridiculous nonsense. And so I'm like, yeah, y'all are all crazy. And it's just kind of continued since then. So ready
Well, and
for reality to descend.
Yeah. These big complex ideas too of, soil health and growing food, and it's complex. And so until you're really in it, it's very difficult. And never do you get to
Kind
a
of
spot where you're like,
abstract.
oh, I understand it all. Like you can't. It is really beautiful and complex. And so to take something like that and try to convey it to mass public is very difficult. So when you get into those climate change conversations, or I find there is so much more to the conversation, just like organic is good and conventional is bad. It's like, well, yeah, it's a little bit less black and white than that. And so when we're trying to convey information across large spaces, it often just gets boxed up into boxes, things that are easy to say or labels. And I commend people because when you get to the consumer side, it's coming from a spot where they're saying, how do I make the good decision for climate change, or for my health, or for the soil, or whatever that is? And labels help them. But like most of these things, we just can't package it up in a tidy little box of like, this is good, this is bad, this is the right, this is the wrong. It's all so intertwined, and that's the beauty of it. And I think that's why so many of us are drawn, across farming, is that beauty of everything being so interconnected and seeing that. And it's just an endless amount that you can dive into and experience. But it's very hard to just
Yeah, it's not something you grasp, it's something
Yeah.
you swim within,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, you swim
That
within.
that and I should say too that um, you know, he's been a presidential candidate. He's been I I really can't say his name, but the a we had a lot of engaging conversations about the climate change situation, and I brought up very many times the and just kind of getting his perspective on, let's say, corn and bean subsidies and how this deals with the land use, and because carbon is the focus, right? So it's carbon, carbon, carbon. So carbon sequestration and land use and food production and the agricultural welfare system. And we talked through that, and he seemed a little bit unaware, and then proclaimed it as a completely niche topic that wasn't meaningful.
Regenerative ag was a niche
Yeah,
topic,
and then
kind
we
of
talked
a
about
obscure.
meat, right, and the meat production, because we talked about how you can have feedlot systems, which there's a big anti-meat thing going on, right, in the
Meat is
environmental
bad.
movement.
Yeah.
And so, if meat means big unhealthy feedlots with massive chemical inputs, you bet. That sounds great. The methane from the cattle, from the corn, et cetera, et cetera. But if you talk a grazing system where so much of this land is suitable for grazing, and if we don't need to be using, is obviously the energy system tied in with the agricultural system, with using growing corn to have ethanol because of failed energy policy, all that whole thing, and then the corn syrup, all this stuff. And we could just graze this and really smart ways, which we know all about now, not all about, but we know enough about to be able to do incredible jobs and build soil, build carbon sequestration, better quality meat, all this stuff.
And deep-rooted plants that actually sequester carbon.
Yeah, and we could
Yes.
we could address this dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico, right? From all the, it's just, you guys know all about this stuff.
Yeah.
And that was so unimportant. It was so
Well, that's
unimportant.
because JBS is probably paying him a lot of money, the meat barons.
It was incredible.
It's about the packers. It's not about the
Yeah.
ranchers.
But there's not, I think also there's just not room right now in that conversations out there. It's like, well, meat is bad. Just eat plant-based stuff. There you go. Like that's kind of, it's an easy line to give to the public. And so it is
A
discouraging.
lie. It's an easy lie to
it
give
is.
to the
Lie.
public.
Yes.
That's such a different and such a more beautiful conversation to have when you talk about these ecosystems that play together and how much more beneficial that can be for everything.
If you don't, there's good reasons not to eat meat. I mean, there's reasons that whatever personal decisions, they get it. But so you don't have to eat the animals. But if you want to sequester carbon, do this, like graze, these areas and stop paying to grow ethanol. I don't know.
Well, and yeah, you're right. One of the issues for these Iowa farmers and others that are growing corn and soy and things like that is the system pays them to do that. For them to derail and do something different, they're on their own. We don't get subsidies or kickbacks or insurance for doing regenerative grazing and growing. That doesn't exist yet. It's like we have to figure out within, and I think it's probably through NRCS, a system that does reward farmers for healthy soil practices.
I will say it is important to note that NRCS is actually getting really active in that and doing.
Yes, they are.
They are, which is good
Well,
to see.
and
Also, I just want to be careful with the conventional growers that, yes, they have made decisions, but so much of it is around government policy that has got them into this spot. And that doesn't take away
100%.
But they've gotten into this where they have to gear up. They've got to get more production out of their soil. And it's not just because they said, I'm just greedy and just want to go make a bunch of money and do more inputs on the soil. There's so many big systems at play, and so much of it is subsidized, food and what the food is doing and farm bill. It's so big. It's bigger than any of us. And so we are all the humans at play in this. And I think that's where that compassion piece always has to be, is in that human relationship between us. Because it is bigger than any one person.
Well, this is the
There's
chemical ag barons. There's barons in all areas, the meat barons, and this is the chemical ag. This is the money, the big money that is in our government, and it's going to take electing our political leaders who are benefiting the people of the nation and not their own pockets through the lobbyists that are the chemical companies and the pharmaceutical companies and the JBS and all the people that are ruining the food system in our country.
there's an Iowan native who wrote the book Barons, Money, Power, and the Corruption of the American Food System or Food Industry, something like that. His name is Austin Frerick. We recently released our podcast conversation with him. I think you'd really appreciate that chat, and I think you would love that book. And yeah, I highly encourage anyone that eats food to read the book Barons by Austin Frerick.
Thank you.
And yes, you gave me a book recommendation last time we chatted. Bet the Farm by Beth Hoffman. As we were talking about what Crystal and I are doing, you said, that sounds familiar. You should read Bet the Farm. So I recently got back from Northern California. I was there for a week for work. And when I got home, it was on my doorstep. And so I've read the first 6 chapters. If you're watching, here's Bet the Farm. And it's a great book. You're right. Like, you're learning the steps by her just telling the story. And, she's in there saying, we learned XYZ from this experience, but, you're getting to go on the journey with her. I told Crystal, I was like, all right, I'm reading her book. I'm going to find out how our story ends.
Thank goodness. Awesome. I'm on the edge of my seat.
Right.
We've done some Billy Goat swaps with Beth and her husband, John. Yeah, they're good people.
Good folks.
Oh, nice. I love that. Well, is there anything that we didn't ask you that you feel inspired to share with us before we wrap?
There's nothing that comes immediate to mind.
I guess the one thing that Kendra and I have talked about is if you're thinking about farming and you're looking at getting maybe homesteading or farmsteading or farming, and you're wondering how to navigate it all, we don't have an answer for you at all. But be careful with the guilt that can come associated with if you're not earning all your income from the farm, right? This is part of like the holistic grazing concept, as well as the Darren Doty's program, where the part of a resilient life is having diversity in ways that feed you. And everyone's, like Crystal said, everyone's context calls for different responses, and that includes who you are and what resources you have and what land you've got available, or no land, or you want to go complete leasing model, whatever. But there's kind of some shame that goes around sometimes when people say, if you ain't earning all your money from your farm, you ain't nothing. You're a failure. Like we know what that would take for us, and I like my other jobs. I really do. Like, it's cool. Like I like doing other stuff too. And so they're all in competition. They're all elbowing for room, but what's more virtuous for you, you have to determine yourself.
Yeah, I think that's it. It opens up your ability to think creatively when you're not hindered by that box put around you to say, I have to earn all this, and we have to get there because we're going to run out of money in 18 months.
I did $1 million loan real quick.
That will do it, and that'll, it does put this pressure on you. And so if you can take that constraint off, it actually opens up your view. And you might still choose that path, but it might be a 3-year path. Or you might say, it might be really interesting if I looked at it this way, or if I did this with this. It it makes you more flexible. We never would have opened the farm store if I had said, we have to earn all of our money from the farm, because it would have been too risky. I would have been like, well, there's no way that's going to make money. That's just off the table. We have to choose something that's more reliable, that's, definitely tried and true. And turns out the farm store, might become that down the road for us. I don't know.
Yeah, if
I
we
don't know, but I
we
have to
got
be
more
open.
land, then that would shuffle things up too.
Yeah.
And so these are all live conversation, but it's a process.
Yeah.
We definitely don't feel like we're at an end point or anything like that.
No. And so I think these external pressures, or I should say often internal pressures that we put on ourselves, are the ones that are most constraining and really fix our path in ways that maybe wasn't the path we should go down. So being open to that. And I also think too, we're always open. We've had a couple younger folks actually here in the community who've reached out to us like, hey, can we come out and chat with you? You guys are doing regenerative ag. We're like, absolutely. And so I would recommend people to reach out to people in your area, because it is really, it's also encouraging to know that there's other folks around you. You've got resources, and so many people are willing to mentor. I had a mentor for my farm store, which I'm super grateful for. We have an amazing program in Iowa called Iowa Practical Farmers, which is this kind of community, and it's so helpful to tap into those. And you've got new farmers and old farmers, and everybody's willing to chat, and it's to help everyone together. So tap into those organizations where you can.
I love that. That's great advice. And if you want to connect with Jonah and Kendra online and see what they're doing, you can go to holdfastfarmstead.com. And also Kendra's craft sewing business. That website is anchored-by-design.com. And sister, you have to go check it out, because it's like the reusable face cloths and like makeup removers and the, reusable paper towels and stuff like that. I bought a lot of this stuff when I was living in Oakland, and people ask me all the time where I got it. And I'm like, I have no idea. So now I'm going to start recommending your stuff.
And the cute little, put in a caveat there.
You're not doing it anymore?
I might have to cut some of this out. I've recently made the decision to stop that business slowly.
Okay.
But you have stock.
I still have stock that I'm selling, absolutely, and it's still up. And we sell most of it through the farm store right now, rather than I do a wholesale, but basically to focus more on the farm store, because the farm store has become successful. And so for me, it's one of these like, how do I manage these things? So I'm closing down a portion of that business, and which is kind of my wholesale market space where I've sold most of that, and I'll continue to sell through the farm store as I have it available.
But you're wanting to sell stuff still.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm still selling stuff. Sorry, I'm not. But I just want to say it's not my long-term business plan. It's the one that's like, okay,
that's all right.
That's okay. Well, and this is a great
before it sells out. Yeah.
Well, this is a great lesson whenever we talk about managing our time, managing our interests. This isn't working for me anymore. I want to phase this out. I mean, I was crying the other day on the phone with Crystal, because I'm just like, I'm overwhelmed. I'm spending so much time staring at a screen. I want to be outside more, and it's like, how do we do that? How do we figure out how to change what I'm doing so that I don't feel, trapped inside this computer? Right. And so we have to make these decisions. That's part of living a regenerative life.
And it can be so beautiful and like freeing as you do these things, because it does make you say, well, what is really important, and what is it that I want to pursue? And that answer can be so different for everyone, And so sometimes it is like, I actually want to pursue less money because it means more freedom or more out time, like whatever that might be. I'm choosing that so I can do more farm store, but we also homeschool our children. So I want more time with that. I want more time to be able to engage with them. So there's all these decisions, but sometimes it's really wonderful to be able to go, oh, okay, that feels so good. I see that so clearly what I want now.
Yeah. Well, and that's real life, because I was working at a 9-to-5 job. I was office manager for a civil engineering firm, and now I do a million things. I do soil sisters. I I'm a consciousness coach. I do my own sessions with people, and I manage Airbnbs, and I'm managing an event center. And it's just like, you know what? All of these things, I have money coming in from 5 or 6 different places. And so then I get to relax, and I don't have one thing hanging over me, and I get to shift and move. And if something becomes too much, then I let that go, and I can pick something up as I go. I mean, and it's beautiful. I love that we even just had this part of the conversation, because it's like that worked for me for a minute, but now all of a sudden things have shifted and I want to put more of my energy in there. So we'll sell all your stuff out, and then you can do the farm stand.
Yeah.
Well, Jonah, Kendra, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for who you are and for sharing your story with us. And I'm sure we'll circle back and do this again sometime soon.
Great. It's been great to chat with you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank y'all so much.